Hi everybody, time for a quick look inside Vancouver Public Schools. I'm Nick Bull. Online learning is the reality, has been for a couple of months, and it will be moving forward for the foreseeable future. So we wanted to check in with high school teachers to see what it's been like to teach under these conditions. And joining me now are high school teachers from the four major high schools. We've got Sid Sloan from Hudson's Bay, Jenny McAnally from River, Luana Parno from Fort, and Aaron Annis from Skyview. Guys, thanks for being here.
Thank
you
you.
for having us.
And so this is just a question for all of you guys. How hard is it to conduct high school classes remotely? It seems impossible to do, but everybody's doing it and it seems to be going reasonably well so far.
I'll start. I'm a PE teacher. PE it's been a little difficult just in the sense of trying to create a lesson plan for everybody, not really knowing what equipment or what we have going on. So what we've really tried to focus, and I probably have some of the best coworkers, is just kind of a basic plan that's real direct and real focused on getting movement. And we kind of look at it as like, hey, you're doing a lot of other things where you're sitting in front of the computer. Let's do something where you're out moving, enjoy the fresh air. If you have the opportunity, go out, get a quick little run in, get a quick little workout, and then, come back and finish whatever else you have to finish.
Sure. Anybody else have anything to add there?
I think for me, one of the real challenges is that I teach literature and a class called Theory of Knowledge, and both of those classes involve constructing knowledge together in a social setting. And so it has become, it feels a little disingenuous to say, read this piece of literature and respond in writing. Now read this piece of literature and respond in writing, because it really takes out some of the major elements of how teaching and learning are best done in my subject area. So trying to find ways to encourage them to still speak about what they're learning, whether those prompts ask them to read it and then talk about it with somebody in their home, or call a friend who's also in the class, or just sort of trying to continue to facilitate that Socrative element of learning has been a real challenge, but I'm trying.
Luana, how about you?
I'd say I teach mathematics, and the hard thing about that is most of the time to get support with mathematics, it's kind of a one-on-one. Like, you can teach generally, but everybody sees things differently when it comes to pattern making. And so without a classroom, it's really hard to really support students who are struggling, or students that have limited language abilities. And you don't see their faces. So normally when you're teaching, you can pick up on all the cues of like, I have a question, but I don't want to raise my hand. But on here, it's a little more difficult to pick up on those nuances. And students also aren't, even though they're tech savvy, I wouldn't say they're super comfortable with having a class online yet. And so building that, I think building the classroom community online has been my primary focus, with math actually being secondary. Trying to help them feel like they're comfortable and that we're all doing this together.
Sure. And Aaron, finally, let's hear from you.
I also teach literature or composition course, and then I teach French 1. And the foreign language element has been a challenge because in the classroom, it's 100% interactive. We hardly even use technology at all in the classroom. We talk to each other. So I can't say that I've got that down perfectly for foreign language or for English for that matter, because yeah, Jenny is right. Like, it depends so much on building knowledge from what other people have to say about the texts. However, I think maybe a challenge that might have been unanticipated was just the fact that we assume at the high school level that students are capable of kind of setting goals or using a planner and checking things off on the planner, but they're not yet. And that's very normal developmentally. So coming up with a very regimented routine for my classes and posting things at the same time and letting them know what their work is going to be for the whole week ahead of time is totally different from the way that I teach in the classroom, but I've had to do it to provide stability for students so that they can manage their time better at home and they can help their families out.
Sure. So with the state mandated requirements for students in the classrooms, high school students have the most available time which means teachers, I'm guessing, have more interaction at the higher levels than the lower levels. What is your average day like to any of you guys? What is your average day like in a nutshell, just so people can kind of visualize what you guys are doing all day instead of being in the classroom?
I actually have kept a log of how I'm spending my time each day, partly because I want to be able to look back and reflect on this experience and note for myself, like what worked, what was a good use of my time, what wasn't a good use of my time. And also partly because I think, well, what if somebody asks me to account for my time and how I spent it, and how I'm continuing to earn a wage when I'm not physically in the classroom. So there are a couple of different benefits for doing that. But to answer your question, I'm generally, I'm on the computer before 8 a.m., usually 8 till about 10 is spent scoring the work that was submitted the day or the evening before on Google Classroom. So record keeping and looking at student work and giving feedback when needed, and then checking up and catching up on emails. Usually between 10 and 1, then I'm available for student contact. So several days a week, I have 2-hour blocks of office hours where I'm just available on Zoom to meet with them while I'm also planning, reading, doing my own research. And then usually from 1 to 3 or 4 in the afternoon, I am doing curriculum writing and planning. So that's where I'm having to take, for instance, my theory of knowledge class is completely interactive and cooperative learning, and I'm having to revamp all of that curriculum to be an online model. So that's where I'm spending a couple hours in the afternoon writing curriculum or rewriting curriculum. So that's how my day goes: morning, record keeping and catching up on communications; middle of the day, being available for students and parents for communications while I'm also working on whatever I'm working on, miscellaneous tasks; and then afternoon curriculum writing. So
are the rest of you, I mean, obviously Jenny's very regimented in her day. Is that sort of typical for the rest of you at all?
We have kind of a breakdown of Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, kind of hours throughout the day that our school has kind of set up that let parents and students know, like at that specific time, like first period is when you can kind of focus on it. It's not necessarily to the T. For example, like I responded to an email on Saturday to someone who had asked a question, just because this has taught me that just not everyone's on the same schedule. We have kids that are working, we have kids that are taking care of family members. And so we've become really open and available, I think, throughout the day. But I would say, similar to what's been said, just kind of having a schedule has been a lot more useful, and just kind of following it than just like randomly being like, oh, I'm going to do this today and that today. And going back to, I post all assignments on Monday for the week so that all the kids have what they need to do. And then throughout the week, I'll get 100 different questions at 100 different times. But it allows me to, one, be able to see what's worked for some kids, or what questions are constantly being asked and I need to change it. It's not the kids, it's what I'm putting out. And so it helps doing it on Monday, because then throughout the week, I can see how the progress is being made.
Sure. I'm curious too, all of this stuff is happening online. What kind of tools are you guys using? Just real quickly, like the teachers I've spoken to, there's a huge tool set available from the district, but everybody uses the tools a little differently in different ways. And I find it fascinating to see, well, this teacher is really into Google Classrooms, but this person's really into like Seesaw or Canvas. This person does a ton of videos. How are you guys using the digital tools that are available to you?
I've been using Google Classroom. I've used Canvas in the past, decided to try Google out this year. I will say for the last 2 years in my classroom in French, Avid, or AP Language and Composition, I don't really use the one-to-one technology a whole lot in the classroom. It's just not the way I teach, even though I'm grateful that it's there and we do use it for research and internet access and stuff like that. But I don't do a lot in the online classroom in a physical classroom. So I had to transition completely. And I feel really grateful for the work from our ITF teachers who made so many tutorials available to us. So now I feel very comfortable using Google Classroom, which I never used before this year. I've been using WeVideo to record videos for my students, either like speaking French and they can respond back quietly, or lectures for my AP Language and Composition students about the tests that they have coming up in May. And then I've also made use of an app for my French students called Book Widgets, which has a ton of vocabulary games that I can put in for them to practice with, so that all the practice that we normally would do in class with one another or with partners, they're doing online. So I would say WeVideo, Google Classroom, Book Widgets, and then I've also been using Flipgrid a lot for French. So I'll record a video saying something in French to them, and then they record a video saying something back, and then I can give them feedback on their pronunciation. And then I use Padlet a lot too for discussion assignments in French or in AP class as well. So I'm trying to limit myself to, that's a lot. I'm trying to limit myself to just those few, so that the students themselves aren't overwhelmed having to log into 100 different things. But it's been really fun to learn that, and it's been a hard transition to go online, but it's been really fun to learn, and it's been nice to kind of put myself in the shoes of the students.
Sure. Are there any other tools that any of the rest of you have been using you think are helpful?
I'm a Canvas user only because I've used it ever since it started. And since you can upload your grades from Canvas to Skyward, I'm still in Canvas cycle. But in mathematics, we have Math Lab for upper level pre-calculus and calculus students. And that gives them automatic feedback so they can actually do practice and get examples for each problem. We also use Agile Minds, which is a new curriculum to most of the math classes in the district for algebra and geometry. And that's pretty good. But I would say for algebra students, they definitely need more support one-on-one. So going back to the schedule, I actually have 2 or 3 Zoom sessions a day that are like 45 minutes for the whole class to sit down so that we can, like, I can do math on paper and, like, you know, give them all the examples that they might need in all the different ways. So.
Sure.
One other piece of technology that I've used this year for the first time is Khan Academy for some grammar review. So I've been pretty excited about learning how that works. Again, very steep learning curve for me, while I'm also trying to kind of juggle and keep all of my plates spinning, trying to find ways to keep things relevant so that kids don't, you know, feel like we're just asking them to do busy work. But this felt like a great opportunity to take a week or two for each of my 10th grade students to just review some grammar principles, and they have great resources on Khan Academy. So I was like, hey, no need to reinvent the wheel. So even though I've been using Google Classroom for all of their online submission of work up until now, for about 2 weeks, we'll take a little hiatus and they'll be using Khan Academy. And so far that's going pretty well. I'm learning how to navigate and read the reports and, you know, check where learning is happening and where learning is not happening, so I can address those with individual students and say, you know, I noticed you really struggled with this concept. How can I support that? Maybe we need to redo that lesson. So I've appreciated dabbling in Khan Academy. That's new for me.
Sure. And so from crisis can come opportunity sometimes. And one of the things I've been pretty curious about, do you guys believe, as you were using these new tools, that these are things you can use going forward? Have you been able to develop professionally, do you think, because of this? I mean, things are going to be this way for a while, but not forever, hopefully.
I can kind of speak to that because right before my staff meeting today at 2:15 and before this Zoom call, I was creating an online resource for something I do every year in Theory of Knowledge. It's called, it's a thing students have to do called a knowledge framework, and it exists for each of the 8 areas of knowledge that we study. And in the past, I would just hand it out to them and describe it in class and point them to a source in the book that describes each element. But I won't be there to give that lecture and interactive lesson this time. So I've put together an online source, a little tour through, guided tour through the knowledge framework on PowerPoint. And then I'll record my voice over it, explaining each item and what will be there. And then I was thinking to myself as I was doing it today, gosh, what a pain. You know, like this really takes a lot of work. I spent several hours on it, and normally I would just be able to speak to my class for 30 minutes about what I know. But then I was also thinking, well, how nice that this will be available in the future. I'm creating it now, but next year's class, as they come through, I can certainly continue, if we're back in our classrooms, doing things the way I've always done them. And then this will be a really nice supplement that can be there to reinforce learning for students who needed a review of it, or students who missed class that day, or just to increase my professional portfolio of the materials that I've created. So there have been many examples, but that's one in my very fresh memory from today of things that I have been sort of forced to do out of necessity, but that I think definitely will have a benefit for me in the future.
I think for PE, we were starting to trend towards using Google Classroom, not necessarily as like a teaching tool, but we do like fitness testing and we do a lot of that stuff. And so that was a way that kids could see live, like where they're at and kind of on a fitness test week, how they did compared to a previous fitness testing. So this has really helped like expand our knowledge on it. And then also it's cut down a lot of we do like paper and pencil check-ins or an exit ticket and all. And it's really shown that we can do those things and maybe catch more kids online where they can do it on their own time rather than like as they're walking out of the gym or as they're first coming in, somebody doesn't have a pencil and somebody doesn't have a pen, so they don't do it anyway. So we've been using like the forms a lot, and then it tracks it so cleanly that like it's easy for us to really look at it and just kind of discuss it. Hey, these kids are really enjoying this, those kids are really enjoying that. And so I think it's kind of streamlined some of our data that isn't necessarily numerical data. It's more of like what the kids are enjoying and what they're not enjoying in a quicker, more time efficient way. So we're definitely going to probably move forward with some of the forms and that we've created. But I mean, as a PE teacher, there's nothing like being in the weight room with 35 kids and the energy that creates and like a workout or that sort of thing. Like that's not something that can be redone.
They can't lift their iPads or Chromebooks.
Yeah, I mean, like you just don't get like we had kids. So I had a class that was majority boys, but I had probably 8 girls in the first semester, and one of the girls, she wanted to hit a max. And so she was trying. So we stopped the whole class and everybody stood there and everybody's cheering and yelling, and she hit her max and everybody jumped up and down and cheered for her. And that's something that like without having that feeling, there's no way to replace it. Like as much as we can record videos and post it, like a like on Twitter or a like on Instagram doesn't feel the same as everybody jumping up and down and like dousing you with water, you know? So it's like, it's a different feeling.
Sure. Something I've been pretty curious to with teachers is education isn't one way, right? You're not just projecting information at students, you're working with kids, it's back and forth. You're also now more than ever working with their parents. What's it been like working with parents as partners in education? And also what kind of feedback are you getting from parents and students about this process?
This is an answer that could have worked for me for the last question that you asked, but honestly, the interaction with parents has been a major upside to teaching online. And it's definitely something that I'm going to incorporate whenever we go back to in-person teaching. I'm going to reach out to parents much more frequently and much more often, just in general. I mean, I never had any problem reaching out to parents to say something good that their child had done or something that their child needed to work on if I had a concern, but just maybe like broad communications about what we're working on. It's been really nice to like touch base with parents and say, this is what we're working on this week and this is what you should be looking for your child, and to hear them say like, to hear them have some feedback on that. So this is something that whenever we go back to in-person teaching, I'm going to bring that to the classroom, is more reaching out to parents just in general.
Sure.
And I would say a lot of the feedback I've gotten, I would say actually 100% of the feedback I have gotten from parents has been super positive, as far as recognizing the work that we're doing and really feeling thankful that we're here to be able to support their kids. And even though we're in a really awkward setting doing all of this remote learning, I've had some really great emails from parents of just encouragement and kindness, and that's been very like uplifting in the whole process.
Sure.
I would agree with what everyone said. I think that like, and not necessarily, I can speak more to like out of school. So I coach different sports and stuff, and I've had parents reach out and just kind of like, hey, how are you and your family doing? How are things going, like that, in a way that, I mean, we see each other often enough, so we would ask, but this has been just a kind of a different experience of just a different experience for everyone, and we're all kind of going through it together. And so I've been really blessed to just be around a really good community that we have at Bay, and just how caring everybody is.
Sure.
And on top of even the parent question, students themselves have reached out with emails and saying, how are you? Are you okay? Is everything all right? I really miss being in class. And just, I didn't think I imagined that happening.
Sure. Well, so I guess then my final question is to all of you. You know, everybody, especially now that we're all at home, are sort of in our own little silos, and it's hard to see what's happening elsewhere. So all this work that you guys are doing away from eyes, you know, behind the scenes, and then all their district groups are doing as well. I'm just curious if there's anything that you think the community, especially those without kids right now, need to know about the work you guys are doing and the work that kids and parents are doing. Is there anything, if you could address them directly, what would you say?
Thank you for trusting us with your kids. And thank you for coming along on this ride with us and being flexible. And if you don't have children, you're a taxpayer who doesn't have children, like me, I don't have children. Thank you for trusting us with the education of future generations. Like, this is not an easy situation to be in for families or for anyone really. And so we're doing the best that we can. And we're learning along the way too. And I hope that we're living out our values with our students, which is that learning is uncomfortable and it requires perseverance and it requires determination. So thanks for trusting us with that process and going through it with kids and the future, you know, adults of America.
I think that's so well put, Erin, and I would completely concur with that, and also thank the community of students, you know, from our school for the same. I think I would also want adults in our community to know that our work continues. So even though it may seem like, oh, we're off work or we're at home now and all we really have to do is push out assignments on a platform and then check them in when they come in, just to be so that you are aware, like my PLC team continues to meet. We're continuing to try to find ways to work together and collaborate to be innovative during a time where it's like, well, how are you managing this? And I'm still sending assignments that I'm getting ready to assign to my teaching team and asking them for their feedback. And we had a really nice Zoom call Monday after our principal's Zoom. We just meet every other Monday, still online with our PLC. So all of the things that we were doing before, we're still doing, and including our own scholarship. You know, I consider myself a scholar educator, right? So I'm still reading literature. I'm still using literary critical approaches. I'm still doing research when a student expresses an interest in a particular topic. Oh, I remember having read an article about it, and I'll go grab it and send it on to them. So all of the ways that we were available to students and families before, we are still available. And all of the work we were doing behind the scenes when the instruction wasn't taking place in just that delivery model, all of that is still happening as well. So I just feel like my teaching team and myself have a tremendous amount of integrity and professionalism and a passion for the work that we do. And this hasn't gotten in the way of that. If anything, it has fueled it. And we've really come together. I've learned a ton from my colleagues and learning what they're doing and how they're using Zoom or how they're using Canvas and challenging and inspiring one another. So that work continues.
I think, I mean, again, I agree with everybody. I think what would be something I would hope to kind of push out to everybody is that some of these kids are resilient. Like, I know we think of like online learning as like this really, oh, it's easy and all of that, but like these kids are doing things that adults are struggling to do, and the kids are figuring out ways that may make it easier for us to then teach other people, or even moving forward as a teacher. I mean, this is only my second year of teaching, and I'm learning things that now I can use moving forward that without this I may not have learned. And it's just one of those things that, I mean, test scores and all of those things don't necessarily equate to how genius some of our kids are and how caring and just how wonderful some of these people that are coming out of these high schools are going to be for our community. And then the second thing would be just, I can speak for my school at Bay. The leaders of our school, so the admin team, the people that are in charge of running our school, have done such a good job trying to make everybody feel comfortable that it's taken a lot of the stress of the new away. So there was a lot of anxiety, I think, felt going into it, of like, oh, how are we going to be judged as teachers? How are we going to be this? And I think the communication has been unbelievable. We have PLC meetings weekly that our admin team sit in on sometimes, and they're just like, oh, hey, explain to me what you're doing. How does that work? And I've just been really appreciative of how our admin have viewed us as people and understand that this is a lot for everyone. And it's just, I wish more people got an opportunity to see them work. A lot of the admin do a lot of things behind closed doors, and if you're talking to them, a lot of times it's not necessarily, you don't get to see the exciting work that they do. So I want to highlight them, and then just highlight the students. These kids are amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd like to piggyback on top of that, especially the comment about students, because I think in this moment we really get to see them rise up and really push through in a situation that nobody has ever had to be in. You know, as adults, it's hard for us, but for students to be able to step into that role and valiantly. And along with the skills that they're learning now, it's not just their core subjects, but they're learning how to write like really great emails, which, you know, I mean, sounds crazy, but they're like business skills, how to communicate with their teachers, how to, in a setting that's not one-on-one, you know, how to have a meeting like this with a bunch of people and be part of the online community. So they're learning skills, I think, that are things we never planned to necessarily teach them, but will make them like more than job ready.
All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me today. I can tell you that the community does appreciate what you are all doing for our kids right now. So keep up the good work, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go Bay.
Parents, there are options out there for you too. The district has put together a remote learning website. Head to welearn.vansd.org. You'll find a wealth of knowledge on there, and if you scroll down just below the main picture, you'll find a link to remote learning support and also a phone number to call if you need help during office hours. Thanks for watching this quick look. Until next time, I'm Nick Vole.